Justin. Thank you everybody for joining me today. It's great to be a part of Socrata Connect. We're happy to be a sponsor of the event. We're happy to be partners with Socrata. And it was really great today hearing the keynotes from Kevin and Bruce. And I took a lot from that. Because right off the bat, I think our companies are very much aligned in this partnership. If you think earlier today, Kevin talked about we want to use data so that governments can use that data more strategically. And then Bruce followed up with that and said that they want to create better communities to improve society. And Amazon Web Services and Amazon's core corporate values are very much aligned to that. We're in talks with some of the same cities you saw today, talking through homeless initiatives. We have other homeless initiatives around the country that we're actively involved in. And if anybody's used our .com service and is like a member of Prime, for example, you may notice also that we give 50% off our Prime memberships to SNAP recipients, food stamp recipients, and also Medicaid recipients. So our values are aligned, and some of you may also have heard in our headquarters town of Seattle, which we're also actively looking for a second headquarters, we also donated 47,000 square foot to a homeless shelter in Seattle. So those are the kind of initiatives that Amazon's involved with, and it was really exciting this morning to hear Kevin and Bruce talking along the same lines. I'll figure this out. So how do we get here? Usually this is where I ask the audience if anybody knows what the picture on the left is. Anybody? It's a distribution center. And then on the right, you see a snapshot of one of our data centers of Amazon Web Services. So back in 2006, Amazon realized that we had gained this knack, this capacity to scale our servers for different kind of peak demand events. Christmas, Black Friday, my wife's birthday, those kind of things. So we realized very quickly we could sell that skill, that extra capacity, and build a data center service that we could allow our customers to utilize. A lot of people think we donated extra capacity in our data centers, and so we would just throw other kind of sensitive data along with ours. That's absolutely false. What we really did was built out a whole different ecosystem with Amazon Web Services, again, allowing customers to take advantage of this capacity to scale. I'll ask anybody a question. And that ability to take on that capacity to scale allows our partners like Socrata, our end user customers like the state of California to focus on, I crossed the white line, so I have to apologize. You guys can't see it, but apparently, it does something to the lighting. Anyway, back on track. It allows our customers to really focus on what they do best, the differentiated heavy lifting, to add value to their citizens, their customers, and it allows us to focus on the undifferentiated heavy lifting. Because I usually ask this question too, how many people buy off of Amazon.com because it's hosted on Amazon Web Services? Let me see the hands. Probably no one. Well, thank you, that's good. I just appreciate the agreeable nature, we'll take it. Very nice. No, because what people come to Amazon.com for is selection and value and convenience. The amount of data that we have on you, we know what your personal interests are, right? And I would say that Socrata's customers come to them, maybe not because they're hosted on Amazon Web Services, because of the value they bring to their constituents. The value that Socrata unlocks for those end user customers is why partners like Socrata choose to host with Amazon Web Services. I have a couple of obligatory photos in here. One is our CEO, Jeff Bezos. I get a gold star now by my name, which is great. But I love this quote, right? And I think it further highlights the alignment that we have with Socrata and Tyler, right? If you remember, Bruce today talked about patience as Tyler brings together this new merger and acquisition with Socrata, right? And it's the same kind of focus that Jeff Bezos had more than 20 years ago. It's a culture of putting the customer first. It's a culture of innovation and inventiveness. And then finally, it's a culture of patience. Because anybody knows, anybody's in gardening, you can't plant those seeds and dig them up every day and see if they grow. It does take time, right? And it takes time for this inventiveness and innovation to take hold in a company. Just for example, just this year alone, Amazon announced $1 billion a year digital ad business. Where did that come from? We also announced a joint venture with the likes of Berkshire Hathaway and JP Morgan Chase and Amazon. Where does that come from? We also announced a delivery service, right? Where do those kind of things come? It comes from inventiveness and patience. The same kind of place that's where Amazon Web Services came from. It came from a white paper actually written more than 10 years ago by our CEO, not Jeff Jassy, Andy Jassy, Jeff Bezos. I'll get all my executive names here correct. And this inventiveness keeps on showing up, and the things that we all take advantage of as consumers. You might have a dash button in their house. Who would ever thought you could sit on the couch, press a button, and your Oreos would be delivered to you? Sometimes within 2 hours. And then, furthermore, your Alexa will tell you when that delivery takes place. Those are the kind of innovations that Amazon and Amazon Web Services are focused on. And how does that actually apply to a smart city? Well, if you take that same dash button that people have in their laundromats and their pantries and their kitchens, that same dash button is a simple 1 or 0 when someone presses it. And when you press it and you're sitting on your couch, that may mean you want Oreos. That may mean if you're in a factory that you're safe. It may mean that there's a problem there that you need to send someone there. We've now taken that same dash button functionality and incorporated it into our IoT delivery system that I'm going to talk about a little bit more today. So I'll have to admit, this is the first of a couple of technical slides. I was told this is more of a business audience, but this is essentially an architecture of our AWS IoT services. And I won't bore you a lot, but you can kind of see where the IoT device center fits into and that's our dash buttons and those kind of things. We have a free RTOS operating system that's an open source operating system. Because as we build out this IoT framework, we allow our customers to choose and pick which services work for them best. We often think that we have the best mousetrap, but we also know that other of our partners are delivering end-user devices that may be better than end-user devices where we can deliver that compute at the edge better. And it may fit in more overall to their overall IoT strategy. Another obligatory slide, a Gartner slide. You can see where Gartner puts us as far as use cases for Internet of Things, which Internet of Things, if you don't know, is really is how we make our way into a smart city, right, if you will. But also around Amazon Web Services and Gartner. I always like to include a Gartner slide because I think it's very easy for all of us to go to these presentations and think through and hear from a marketing person or a salesperson how great their company is. And I'm no different. But I would tell you that as you look for cloud providers, I would tell you to look at the independent analysts like Forrester and Gartner and see where they rank Amazon Web Services as it relates to Internet of Things use cases, infrastructure as a service, and platform as a service. And finally, this is my bottom line up front slide. Smart cities. It's all about the data. Is anybody shocked that I said that at Socrata Connect? Probably not. I mean, I was really pushing for smart cities. It's all about the networking protocol. And then I think one of my teammates, it's all about buying more storage. That's not the case, right? I think more and more what we're seeing, and I've picked up on a phrase a couple months ago that I really liked, although one of my friends is Muslim, and I don't get to use it as much. Oil is the new bacon. No. Data is the new bacon. Data is the new oil. Data is the gold. And I think it's no different in smart city use cases. Because at the end of the day, what I'm going to show you next is that a smart city is a really complex idea. Very complex idea. And if you think about, go back to the innovation conversation I was having earlier, when you think about the addition of autonomous vehicles, all these compute devices at the edge, more and more RFID devices, they're going to have computing devices at the edge, and the connectivity that it's going to require, the place that we're seeing more and more cities start is with the data. Because I think if you can get your hands wrapped around the data and break down the silos, because let's think about all the different places where a city is going to collect data. Justice and public safety vehicles, health and public hospitals, transportation and mobility systems around the city. There's just tons and tons. We're going to have so many silos of data that the first thing we're going to have to do is learn how to aggregate all that data, put it in one place, and make some sense out of it. Let me see, hold on. Let me see, yeah, I meant to hide the Denver slide, but we can talk through, let me go back since obviously my PowerPoint skills failed me from this morning. But just another case in point here is City of Denver, which was one of our City on a Cloud winners. What they're doing, as you can see there, is they're building an enterprise data management platform on our cloud services. Because they're quickly realizing, as they get into the smart city project, the amount of data they're going to collect, the number of silos they're going to have, and the ability to analyze that information and make any sense of it is really going to be challenging. It's really going to be a challenge. And so if you think back to 2006 when Amazon Web Services was first around, how are you going to collect all of that data? How are you going to collect it if you don't use the cloud? Right? Because one autonomous vehicle on the road for 8 hours is going to create about 14 terabytes of data. That's one vehicle for 8 hours. Now think about a fleet of buses on city streets all over town for 24 hours a day. And that's just one simple use case of a smart city. Oh, hold on. I really should have been trained on this clicker beforehand. Beth, Justin, we're going to have to get some clicker training back there in the green room. That green room back there, unbelievable. Free Starbursts, breath mints, and water. Okay, so let's talk through the city of Chicago. And I think we saw that a little bit in Kevin's keynote today when he talked about a new feature set that he released. He showed the city of Chicago's Open Grid project. City of Chicago, Mayor Emanuel, elected into office in 2010. I think that was really when this thought of government and transparency really was launched. Went into a relationship with Socrata and began this open data grid concept. And now today they have over 600 different data sets, right, that they open up to civic hackers. It's probably the most it's the most hacked open data set probably in the US. And I think the most exciting thing about this example with the city of Chicago is a real business productivity that's been gained out of it. Businesses are being formed out of these open data sets to make the city of Chicago a better place to live, right? And when you really think about it more and more, and I see this all the time where I'm from in Washington, D.C., we've got 3 competing counties in Washington, D.C., along with the city of Washington, D.C., that are competing tooth and nail every day for the likes of Amazon and Apple and Northrop Grumman and Lockheed Martin to relocate their headquarters into those counties. Now, when you think about what the city of Chicago has done here, and Mayor Emanuel says this himself, the city of Chicago now has become a tech destination. And when companies look to relocate their headquarters, and when citizens like us look to move our families, we want to move our families and put our kids in the schools that have invested in the technology because we use it every day. We use it in everything we do. We go on Amazon.com and buy a book instantaneously, and then we wait for 2 hours in the DMV for our license renewal. It doesn't make sense, and it doesn't have to be that way because of the technology we have at our fingertips today. And let's talk real quickly about the cloud. I won't bore you with there's some other obligatory slides I took out of my Amazon Web Services presentation. You guys can thank me later. I won't talk about the 54 availability zones. I won't talk about 18 different regions and what that means to you. But really, essentially what the cloud means to you as a partner with Socrata and Tyler and an end user for a state government, it gives you the ability to use or pay for exactly what you use. And okay, no big deal, right? We're all used to turn off our lights at night, save a little money on the electricity bill. Hey, we're leaving on vacation. Oh, I've got a smart thermometer now. I'll turn off my thermometer from the road. Okay, great. But think about doing that with your data center. And think about how you want to try to be innovative now as a city or state government. And you have initiative. In the past 6 years ago, to try to build something like the city of Chicago did, what would you do? You'd go ask for a whole rack of servers, probably a bunch of software licenses to host your database, and a whole bunch of storage. And if you got through your 6-month procurement process, most of that equipment was out of date, and you probably collected more data than you already have already, right? So the ability to be innovative with city governments, I think, the likes of Amazon Web Services can help you achieve that ability to invent and innovate, just like the city of Chicago did, right? Because you can take more risks as a city government, and that's a very important part. We talk about cost, right? Amazon Web Services from its beginning has had 64 unilateral price decreases, which causes problem. Actually, it causes problems for our government, because most of the time, governments are used to procuring things for fixed prices and fees, and all of a sudden they say, hey, Amazon Web Services, we have a problem here. Yeah, what's that? We're scheduled to pay you $1,000, but we've only used $900 of your service. I think we can solve that problem. I think we can solve that problem together, right? I mean, that shouldn't be something that holds back the adoption of a utility-based service that allows inventiveness like the cloud. Okay, another obligatory logo slide here, and you have to put this up for any government audience. I mean, who knew there were so many ISO certifications, right? But this is the list of certifications that Amazon Web Services has gone painstakingly through, because if you go back to 2006, people weren't as comfortable with their data in the cloud. And everywhere we go in state and local government, we run up against customers that say, well, I'm not so sure that our data would be safe in your cloud. And then I usually say, well, that's interesting, because at last year's public summit in Washington, D.C., we had the CIO of the CIA stand up on stage, like this one, and say that the Amazon Web Services cloud is bulletproof, right? And we have customers like Citibank that are all in. So people's financial data, take out your credit cards out of that, but all of your financial data with banks all over the country is in the cloud. We've got the CIA and DoD all in on the cloud. We've got CMS with over 77 million health records and a data lake. I think we can handle it. And so it's important, I think, to this audience to show the care and concern that Amazon Web Services has around certifications and compliance. And I talked earlier about how this smart city is a complex subject, and this is just a logical architecture of your smart city, right? And so when you really start to think and break down the level of complexity, and if you take an example like Kansas City, for example, that's monitoring a 2-mile stretch of railway in the city, right? Just around preventive maintenance, those kind of things. That's just one use case. Now think about a fleet of buses, car mobility. Now we're going to start talking about smart intersections and the amount of video data coming in. And later on, I'll talk a little bit about police and body-worn cameras. Right? You can see where it gets to be very, very complex. And I think more than anything, it's actually hampered a little bit the adoption of a true smart city in the United States. So what I was going to do for the rest of my time here is go through some different examples around smart city use cases, around some kind of vertical areas that we focus on at Amazon Web Services. So the first one I'll talk through real quick is transportation mobility. And this is, I guess this gives me another chance to give a shameless plug for the Spasmatics tonight on the 6th floor, because when I first saw this slide, it says street bump, I thought it was some kind of crazy 80s dance. And that's what Justin was trying to do when he changed his shirt back there. That was a joke, so anyway, we'll keep on moving along. But anyway, this is a great example of a city mayor in Boston a few years ago trying to crowdsource the repair of potholes in his city. We all carry around our cell phones, which is part of the Internet of Things, right? It's connected to the Internet, it's connected to GPS, and we can put those cell phones in our cars, and when we pick up bounces, we can report those back up through the system. So that was version 1. But what do you think happened with version 1? False positives all over the place, right? Like somebody's doing jumping jacks or whatever, takes a hard fall, all of a sudden the pothole's right up here on stage. That's not the case. So version 2, they crowdsourced version 2 with a little bit of help from a private entity and awarded a $25,000 prize split between 3 parties that kind of keep on crowdsourcing and getting the application better and better. This is a great example here too. I like it because it also kind of fits in with what Socrata has done with the state of Utah a little bit. So Caltrans, with this Connected Corridors project they have, with the likes of UC Berkeley and PATH, they're starting to realize that transportation is a very complex thing, right? A lot of people just want to monitor the freeway, right? But in the likes of California, you have freeways, you have arteries off the side of the freeways, you have public transportation, all kinds of things that fit into a transportation solution. So what they're doing with Caltrans and Cal Berkeley is they're looking holistically to see how best to move people from place to place. Not really all that complicated. But they're starting with a small little section off of I-280. And that's where I say it's similar to what Socrata's done with the state of Utah. I don't know why I wanted to think about the Utes. But the state of Utah, with the help of Socrata, is starting to publish transportation data, not only to citizens, but also to lawmakers, and they can get very granular. So they could sit down with the likes of a representative in the state of Utah and say, hey, this is the impact of you voting for or against this initiative. And show with data the impact that their vote for or against that transportation bill will have on the overall effectiveness of their transportation system. And Louisville is a great example. I don't know, is anybody familiar with the service If This Then That? Anybody? It's a pretty cool little service, right? You can set up all kinds of really neat things. If you haven't done it, I'd tell you to, download it on your phone, set it up, because it does make very simple if this then kind of statements. So you can set up a lot of useful things for yourself. So Louisville was a winner and first-time adopter of If This Then That. But they're also going through another initiative with traffic, incorporating, again, data into one data lake. They're taking in Waze data, they're taking in highway data into the AWS cloud to give them more insights into how transportation moves through the city of Louisville. And I mentioned Kansas City earlier, and they're kind of known, I think, across the United States as a pioneer in the likes of smart cities. But I tell you to check out Louisville. They're doing some really, really very interesting things. And I have to really start moving along because I think my clock here says I have 4 minutes. Okay, so let's talk through justice and public safety use cases, because I think this is probably one of the most exciting areas, and I'll be honest, sometimes a little scary areas too, right? So Utility is one of our great partners, body-worn camera manufacturer. We have a lot of partners in the body-worn camera space. But when you start thinking about this policing of the future concept, I mean, that's when you really start to see, I think, what the power of the cloud can offer in this concept of policing for the future. And what do I mean by that, right? Because now what we're seeing the merging together between a computer-aided dispatch system, a records management system, now tied in with body-worn camera video. And there's been a lot of studies about the effectiveness and the deterrence of just a policeman having a body-worn camera on his or herself, right? Because a lot of times, a policeman wearing a body-worn camera will just calm down the situation that they're around. It also prohibits them from any of the illicit behavior that we know a small percentage of our police act in. Now, we have RMS data in the cloud, we have CAD data in the cloud, we have body-worn camera data, and I think when you overlay that with the likes of data that we have from Tyler, with their justice and public safety that they have in courts and arrest data, you overlay that and I think you begin to see a picture where machine learning can help deter some kind of crimes. Now, what does that mean? Because honestly, I don't want to, maybe I shouldn't say this, I don't want to live in a society where my picture is being taken everywhere and my likeness is being captured everywhere. But if we can overlay those data sets, could we put 2 police officers in an area at a specific time based on data that says, hey, if we have 2 police officers in this area at this time, we have a 62.3% chance of avoiding a mass disturbance or a crime based on those data sets. And I think you have to have the power of a good, strong AI or ML engine to do that with the help of a cloud, because again, it's going to take a lot of data. Washington County Sheriffs, I don't want to blow through this one too fast, but I only have a couple of minutes here. And this actually speaks to the facial recognition software that I was kind of, I guess, saying it kind of freaked me out, I guess, more than anything. But Washington County, Oregon Sheriff's Department is a great example. I'd tell you all to Google this example, because with our recognition capabilities, what they did is they literally built a facial recognition app for their patrolmen, because if I go back to this slide, what you see on the left there on that picture are PDFs that are sent out to patrolmen all the time. And they're busy, and they're writing up reports, and they're not necessarily seeing all those reports. But this application that Washington County, Oregon built was built over 5 days by themselves, which was pretty interesting to me. They've posted all of the data of how they built that app online. You can look at that. You can find that on our website. And then you can see there at the bottom, within 1 week of going live, they identified a suspect based on that data. Okay, City of Virginia Beach in Virginia. I don't know if I'm going to have time to get through all of these, but I think we have a lot of different use cases as we see our environment and our climate changing all around us. And this is just a great example here of how the City of Virginia Beach, with very little funding, deployed IoT devices, along with the help of 7 different jurisdictions around the City of Virginia Beach, to start monitoring this coastal flooding. This is another one where they shared a lot of information on this online. If you're interested in this, you can learn more about it. But also, I think what's really cool to me about this one now is they've also built an Alexa app for it as well. So you can ask Alexa, you can be alerted to this kind of information. If you live in a low-lying area, you can be alerted to this kind of information and discover in a more unique way. And it also reminds me, I think, of the great work that Socrata did with the Sonoma fires, and somewhat in a different way. If you're not familiar with that use case there, what they did is they took data from Airbnb and different housing sites during the Sonoma fires and made it readily available, because when that tragedy was going on, those wildfires were going on around Sonoma, You had people who were burned out of their house. They were homeless in some regards, and the ability to find available places to stay was at a premium. And I think it's just another great use case of how data can help us avoid some of these catastrophes as well as environmental change. I'll skip through the Jakarta example because the light's blinking red, and I think Beth's getting ready to bring the hook out on me. But I just want to leave you with this because I like this quote. I've used it with my organization quite a bit. You know, the 1,000-mile journey begins with one step. There's a lot we can do together. And I think we are in the early innings of not only data and data analytics tied with the cloud and innovation, and I think it takes great companies and partners like Socrata and Tyler and Amazon Web Services working together to start that journey. And I think everybody sees the applications that are out there, and we have good things in our future. So with that, I appreciate you sitting through my presentation here, and I hope to see you tonight at where, Matt? 6th floor, Spasmatics. Justin, bring that bright shirt of yours back out here. All right.